Thank you for being with us.
John, it's great to be here.
Were you surprised at Colin Powell's comments, Secretary Powell?
Well, I was a bit, because it's clear that if he'd read in the book, he'd only read a part of it, because there's a lot of time devoted in the first half of the book, basically, to my early career, going back to my early days growing up, but then also 3 chapters, for example, on my time in the Defense Department, where General Powell was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I got him appointed to the post, and we worked together very closely and successfully, I think, through Desert Storm and the breakup of the Soviet Union, and did some good work together. By the time we got down to me being the vice presidency and he was Secretary of State, obviously the relationship had grown somewhat strained.
You actually wrote in the book that Powell was disdainful and not supportive of the president's policies. At one point, you also said he personally confirmed the information when he went before the United Nations and made the case about WMD, that he personally went out of his way to confirm the information because he didn't accept it on its face value.
Mm-hmm. That's true. He spent a lot of time putting together that presentation with personnel from the CIA, and then had George Tenet go up and accompany him for the presentation to the United Nations. Turned out, obviously, a lot of it wasn't true.
You know, yeah. And, what Condi said was, we would not have put in the speech if we knew now what we knew.
Right.
So you found that it was devastating to the administration, because then it became Bush lied, people died, we went to war, et cetera, et cetera.
Set off this whole firestorm that we had to live with for the next couple of years.
Yeah. Welcome back to a very special hour with the former Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney. Some interesting tidbits. I asked you about this in our first interview. When you were being selected as Vice President, you put a lot of emphasis. You sat there with the President, then Governor Bush, and Karl Rove, and made the case why you shouldn't be Vice President.
Right.
And you kept saying over and over again, I want you to know I'm a real conservative. And you also talk in this book, you reflect on your entire life and all these years in service, and then you also talk about your grandkids. And you even got the Jonas Brothers. Used the power of that office and influence to get the Jonas Brothers for them. As you reflect on this long decades of service to your country, what are admonitions, what warnings, what concerns do you have for your country? Because you've been there, probably more than any other person in the public arena today. What do you fear about the future for those kids?
Well, I think like a lot of people have mixed views to some extent. I'm enormously proud to be an American and have had the opportunity to serve. I think the potential is virtually unlimited in terms of the future of this nation and what we can accomplish and what we can achieve. By the same token, I'm very concerned about some of the problems I see out there today. I think this long-term debt problem is enormously important. I sense also that it's important that we not, as we try to deal with those deficit problems, lose sight of the importance of maintaining our nation's security. I happen to think that's our #1 obligation and responsibility as a government, and I worry that in this rush to get our deficit problem solved, which is very important, that we'll end up in a situation where the Defense Department, in effect, bears the burden rather than the domestic side of the house, and I think that would be unfortunate. So I think that the next generation will have opportunities to do things we haven't even dreamed of yet. I think in part it's up to us, our generation, to pass on the nation to them in as good a shape as it was passed on to us.
But we're not doing that, are we?
We haven't done it yet. Certainly we've still got major problems that have got to be resolved in the next few years.
During the break, I was kidding with your daughter, Liz, and she said, he could have been harder on President Obama. If he gets a second term and he continues these policies, Does America risk recovering? Do we risk what happens in Europe, what's happening in Great Britain and Greece and Ireland and Portugal and Spain? Does that come to America because we're trying redistribution?
Yeah, I worry very much about another term. I think it would be unfortunate. Obviously, I'm a conservative Republican. I believe deeply in the free market that made America great, and this administration appears to think only in terms of government and what government can do. We haven't seen the kind of emphasis on growing the private sector that I think is absolutely essential. And so I'm not, I don't want you to think I've suddenly become a convert to supporting President Obama. I haven't.
What is your proudest accomplishment?
Well, one of the things I feel best about, Sean, is that we were able on our watch to keep the nation safe after 9/11. We were able to keep those 7.5 years that we were still in office without another major attack against the United States. I think that was a tremendous success. I don't think anybody would have believed that was possible the morning after 9/11, but in fact, because of the President's leadership, because of the magnificent capability of our men and women in uniform, because of our intelligence activities, some very bold decisions, we succeeded in doing something that looked like it was going to be impossible to do in those early days when the smoke was still rising over the Pentagon and the World Trade Center.
Mr. Vice President, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you. And that is all the time we have left this evening. As always, thank you for being with us, and I hope you have a great night.